I am Alma Bailey. The video that you are about to see is of paintings by my husband, Linus E. Bailey. Linus has paintings of points of interest from all over the state of Oklahoma. From the wheat fields in the west, to the north, to the 101 Ranch, the Cherokee Strip, the Run of 89, crossing the Cimarron, Tom Mick's Circus, and back to Seminole oil fields. Any point of interest Linus has a painting of. This video is of eastern Oklahoma, starting at Mcalester and going east to the Oklahoma state line at Fort Smith, Arkansas. The paintings are from the early 1920s through the 1930s. Most of Linus's paintings are from memory. A few are of artist's conception. Linus was born in Gowan, Oklahoma in 1913. He is the former state commissioner of labor. After serving his term as an Oklahoma state elected official, he opened his safety consultant business, L.E. Bailey and Associates. In 1987, he retired. He then had time to put his many memories on canvas. He calls them his windows of the past. And out of the past, he brings to you the lives of many people, events that many of you will remember with happy memories, as well as historical events. You will be able to see his remarkable memory of his childhood. You will also be able to see his love for eastern Oklahoma in the paintings. The paintings are a history lesson. When Linus retired, he started back to painting just for himself. He wanted to see these happy memories come to life on canvas. He never dreamed anyone would be interested in his paintings. Our son and daughter-in-law, Dr. Garrick and Roberta Bailey, saw the paintings, thought they was good, told him he should show them to people. When they left for their home in Tulsa that day, Roberta took several paintings home with her to show her friends and to also get the opinion of some art critics. Roberta started Linus in his art career. When the new Helmrich Art Gallery at Philbrook in Tulsa opened October the 7th, 1990, Linus's paintings was on exhibit as Oklahoma folk art. Since then, his paintings have been in many art exhibits. They are in 12 states. His paintings are in art galleries, libraries, and museums. I keep a record of all Linus's paintings. Each one has an invoice number, and I take a snapshot of the painting, and when they are sold, I put the person's name and address beside the snapshot. This way, I know where all of Linus's paintings are. I would like to thank Linus's brother and his wife, Warner and Betty Bailey, for taking the time to make this video. Warner knew that it was impossible for us to take all the paintings to an art exhibit. So his idea is to bring to you all the pictures of eastern Oklahoma. Linus will be in the video telling you about each painting. I hope that you enjoy seeing the paintings as much as Linus enjoyed painting them. Thank you.
Painting is from southeastern Oklahoma coal mining fields. This sign was erected on the east side of Mcalester by the Chamber of Commerce to commemorate the discovery and the exploration of southeastern Oklahoma. It says on the sign, "La Harpe passed this way, 1719, Mcalester, Oklahoma, coal center of the Southwest, a city of certainty. La Harpe and his party of 5 French soldiers from New Orleans spent about a year in this area in eastern Oklahoma, and they kept a very detailed journal of their trip. They explored Gaines Creek, and as far north as Muskogee and the Kiamichi River area, and part of the entire area of southeastern Oklahoma. This painting is a painting of the Busby Hotel in Mcalester on Grand Avenue. This hotel was one of the most palatial hotels for its time in the southwestern Oklahoma. This hotel existed until the 1920s when it was destroyed by fire, and it is now the site of the Pittsburgh County Courthouse. You notice in the paintings, this was 1908, the old automobiles and the trolley car at the side. The Opera House in Mcalester, also erected by William Busby. This opera house, for its time, was one of the grandest west of the Mississippi. In fact, they had the largest stage west of the Mississippi. During its operation after 1920 and sometime beyond that, they had very cultured and famous people appeared in the operas and the other stage plays at the Opera House. You notice over here in that stairway, if you had a reserved box, you didn't have to go through the front. You notice the crowd gathering for the evening performance. Right here is my mother and father, and this is my little sister and I, and we're going to attend the evening performance. It is seen in the same vicinity of the Grand Boulevard, or now known, of course, as Carl Albert Parkway. This is the hotel and the Opera House in the 1920s. As you notice, the automobiles would become more numerous at the time. Painting of the San Susie Amusement Park, northeast of town in Mcalester. As you notice, this was a favorite amusement center for people in this area. And you notice it's close to the streetcar lines, as the transportation to these parks was provided by the streetcar company. This park existed through the 20s. In the 1940s, it was a site of the prisoner of war camp in World War II. It was a large enough city by the 1920s that each year a major circus performed in Mcalester. This year was the year of the 101 Ranch Wild West show that was owned by the Miller brothers. We noticed in the corner, or is the Miller brothers, the owner of the circus. Out in the center of the arena, the show is the attacked on the wagon train by the Indians. Also, you notice at the left side of the picture, the cavalry is coming to the rescue. In the back here, of course, is the city of Mcalester. Is the annual Pittsburgh County Fair. This is a very popular event in Pittsburgh County, and it drew huge crowds as of course it was on the trolley line. And the amusements of that day, of course, the barnstormers and the balloon ascensions. But this is primarily about 1924 now. Of course, automobiles were becoming very common at that time, and there was also automobile races in the stand or in the stadium there. And I might point out some of the signs here that people would remember. They had a Charleston contest, a Charleston dance contest, and the winner received $100. And over on the right-hand side, you notice there's a sign that the Zinc band from the penitentiary would be playing. They were well known in those times. As I say, this is a very popular event, especially for young people. Speaker Carl Albert once said he enjoyed it very much, and well, so did I. This is a painting of Krebs, Oklahoma. This is the main street running east to Hartshorn. Krebs has a very interesting history, as it was one of the principal mining towns settled by the Italians, and the Italians had a great influence in this area, as they were great miners and great workers. You notice on the corner is Hope's Drugstore, which is the oldest drugstore in Oklahoma. It was opened in 1884. You see, at the bandstand is the proper Italian band. They played at nights and other occasions in Pittsburgh County, especially in the pavilions at San Susie and at Lake Park. It's still Krebs, Oklahoma. This is a very interesting picture of the oldest Catholic church in Oklahoma. It was built by Italian artisans from Italy. As you notice, it's in the Renaissance style. And of course, this church is very active to the present day and has meant a lot to the people in southeastern Oklahoma.
Oh, now, you didn't wait for me.
Labor Day was a very popular holiday in the southeastern Oklahoma coal mining area. This is the Labor Day celebration at Krebs, Oklahoma, about 1925. As you'll notice, Mcalester is in the background, and the Old Sage coal mine is right under the balloon. And this was always an important event, and it was on the streetcar track, and also the Italian band and the other form of amusement for it. This is also from Krebs. As we said, the Italian population of Krebs was real great, and also the they operated many businesses in Cribs. Now this store is still in existence as it looks at present time, but it was established about 1910 by Dominic Duca. And Testis operated for many years. And this was in the early 1920s. There's still horses. But this automobile right here, it was owned by one of my uncles who was visiting here from Akron, Ohio.
No, you didn't wait.
We have now left the Cribs area, and this is a coal mining community south or northeast of Cribs. This is the Carbon Valley. I always thought that this was a rather beautiful setting for a coal mining community. My grandparents lived here for several years when I was very young, and I spent several days in the summer with them. Now I'll come along southeast of Mcalester for about 12 miles to the Dow Lake Amusement Park. This park was established by the streetcar company, or the Pittsburgh County Railway Company at this time. This is Dow Lake Park. It was a very extensive park in its time and was very popular. And of course it's close to Haleyville and Hartshorn. But the streetcar brought most of the crowd to this area. Now this was a complete park, and it had the advantage on being a rather large lake. And right in the foreground is the swimming pool for the young people and people who like to swim. And above that is the pavilion, which the young adults and people love dancing and music. And over here on this side is the bandstand, where usually adults were interested in this type of entertainment, as there were many amateur bands and orchestras in the area at that time. And also the amusement devices, as the carousel and the Ferris wheel and other types of amusement for children. Also, they had boating and fishing on Dow Lake. And notice that there is a power boat, or a boat is propelled by steam that will take you for a little cruise around on the lake. Now, this is a very popular park until probably the day of the automobile, where people they go to other things. And it was my father and mother often visited this when they were young. This is a very important place in southeastern Oklahoma, as this is the Haleyville Railroad Yards, which was the gathering point for the coal mines in this area. As you'll notice, in the background is the roundhouse, and also is number 1 Haley Ola Coal Company mine. Is a painting of the south side of the Haleyville Railroad Yards. You notice the Rock Island and Pacific train station, and also the passenger train is pulled into the station. This was called the Californian, or sometimes the night train to Memphis, as it took most of the night to get to Memphis. You'll notice on the hill is the Ymca, which was a very beautiful building at that time. And you'll notice the viaduct across the rail yards. And this was a lot of fun as a kid as we'd go on top of or up on the viaduct and watch the train pass underneath. This Haleyville. This is a painting of historic significance, as this happened during World War I. This is the Ymca, the railroad Ymca, where the canteen for the World War I soldiers was. You notice the train, a troop train down at the track, and I might point out right in the foreground here is the conductor of the troop train, and this is the officer in charge. And the conductor has his watch out, and he's told the officer how many minutes the train would be there and what time the soldiers would have an opportunity to go across the street to get their cigarettes and other things they wanted. And of course, this is part of the south side of Haleyville. It's one of the best paintings we have of Haleyville. And this is a period of 1918. I was rather sad that the coal mines caved in about 1924 under the YMCA, and the building was lost. This is a painting of a hartshorn looking west. Hartshorn was a center of one of the richest coal veins in eastern Oklahoma. The Hartshorn vein was 4.5 to 5 feet in thickness. It also had a very high volatile quality. People said at that time that 1 ton of Hartshorn coal had the equal BTU of 4 barrels of Oklahoma crude oil. And of course the town greatly prospered in the early part of the century. This is Main Street, or actually is Pennsylvania Avenue, as it was named in the Pennsylvanians that plotted out this town. In the background is it's called Russian Hill, where the Russian miners settled. You'll notice right in this area is the Orthodox Russian church of the traditional architecture of the onion towers and so forth. There's very few of these in North America. And in the background is the Ymca, or the Blue Mountains of the Ymca Range. You notice the Rock Island Pacific coal mine, Rock Island Pacific Railroad Station, and the train is coming in. Now, I spent my high school years here in Hartshorn. Here is the high school. And there's a bus that we rode from eastern part of into town. You notice this is a Saturday evening in Hartshorn, and the business on Saturday evening, of course, was very lively. This was Hartshorn about 1930, or the 1930s. This is another painting of Hartshorn looking southwest. into the Ymca Mountains. But the primary interest in this painting is its Chautauqua. Back in the 1920s, the Chautauqua from Chautauqua, New York, was a type of a show that had a very cultural background as a grand opera and ballet and Shakespearean plays and other programs of that type. It was very popular in the 1920s, and they had great crowds, and they toured the country in a train coach. This is another picture in the west side of Hartshorn. This is a very historical, significant painting, as this is the arrival of the first trolley car in Hartshorn by on the Pittsburgh County Railroad. This was on November 16, 1904. You notice the businesses in this area dominated Duke Store and also the great trading company. Now, on the car was a delegation from Mcalester in the style of that dress of that period. And of course, they were met by a group of people in Hartshorn, including Marshall Berry and Grady, the owner of the store, and a number of other people. You might notice a little Indian on the Indian horse right here on the left side. I use him in quite a number of my pictures. He's the Choctaw Indian. The Choctaws had a view that the white man civilization had a lot for them, and they wanted to be the observers. And this is a very significant trait of the Choctaws. This is very important because it provided transportation to Mcalester and other areas. Another painting from Hartshorn at the railway station. If you notice the crowd out there for the station, some are coming and some are going. This is also the train to Memphis East. Is a type of business that was very important in the early days of the 1900s. This is the livery business of J.R. Berry. This business, we had about 25 vehicles of the buggy and the Surrey type. It might be said that the livery barn was the horse motel of the day. If you rode a horse to town or came in a buggy or some other vehicle, you boarded the horse at the livery barn. An overnight stay in the livery barn, which the horse got a clean stall and a bucket of oats, and spent the night, of course, and for about 50 cents. At that time, at the YMCA, a man could get a bed for 25 cents a night. So the horse, his hotel bill was higher than the man's. But this was a very prosperous business in the days before the streetcar and automobile and other major types of transportation. This is the J.R. Berry homestead on the east side of Hartshorn. Mr. Berry was my wife's grandfather. And you see in the picture, he was going back to his business. Mr. Berry was a U.S. Marshal out of Judge Parker's court at Fort Smith. For many years he served as U.S. Marshal in the Indian Territory. But as the territory became more settled up, why Mr. Berry moved to Hartshorn, which is a very prosperous town, and of course operated and put up in the livery business. And he also served as the town marshal for quite a number of years, and he was very prominent there. But his home was very interesting, as this home was constructed by a Choctaw Indian chief. And you notice that the Choctaws at this time had reached a quite advanced stage of civilization. They understood the carpenter work and the architecture of the white men. And he done a special job on his fretwork on the front of the house. You also notice here that the house is the breezeway, which we would call a breezeway, but they commonly referred to as the dog run back in those times. And notice in the background is a round mountain, or the Bell Star Mountain. This is the North Ward School in Hartshorn. Education in the Indian Territory in early Oklahoma was considered a very important thing by the coal mining towns, as there were many foreigners in these towns who were illiterate, and they thought that education was very important. Fortunately, from the revenue from the coal companies, they had plenty of money to erect buildings of this type. This is a high school in Hartshorn, Oklahoma. It's about a block south of Main Street. I know this building very well, as I spent 4 years in high school here. And you notice right at this side of the building, this little girl coming around, well, that was my wife. Evidently, she knew about the door in the back, and she was either going home or playing hooker or something. But you might notice these two fellows in the front. Well, I'm this tall boy, and this is my little Italian friend, little Flondi. And we were standing there, and of course this is noon hour, and we were back to school for the evening there. This high school was erected about 1918, and existed up to the 1950s when they built a new school. Early days of the 20th century, the 4th of July was one of the most important holidays of the year. In a small town throughout America, and of course Hartshorn as well, had a community celebration. This is from the city park in the southeast part of town back about 1920. You notice the picnic and the amusements are owned and operated by local people. You notice that the balloon up there, the balloonist was named Jackson, or Bill Jackson, and it was known as Balloon Jackson over the community. You notice at the merry-go-round, or steam propelled merry-go-round, which a lot of people call the steam swing, was owned by Mr. Bill Kyle from Gown. And of course this is in operation 4th of July morning. And you notice in the center his daughter is playing on the pipe organ. And the other events, of course, were the baseball games in the afternoon, and dancing, wrestling, and boxing on the platform here in the evening. And the whole community usually attended this. There's another painting of the Hartshorn 4th of July celebration about 1924. As you notice, of course, this is a different view, and probably traveling carnival was in town, but also the same amusements were still in evidence as the balloon ascension and the stunt flyers. You might point down here, one of the local fellows had a Stetson Bearcat, and here I am, right here on my blue bicycle. I had a bicycle was painted blue, and I rode it down to the park. This is still another picture of a 4th of July celebration or picnic in Hartshorn. Also in this picture, he had just completed the parade, and some of the folks were coming in, and this was during the prosperous days in Hartshorn, and of course this was usually a 2-day event, which most of the people in that part of the country attended at some time. Hartshorn picnics are a very popular subject. That's why I painted so many. This is kind of a significant painting. This is the beginning of the rodeo in southeastern Oklahoma. Of course, this is the Hartshorn ballpark. This rodeo was produced by Mr. Will Shaw, who had a ranch east of Hartshorn. Of course, this was organized by him and by local people and a local roundup club. This started about 1925, and after that, the rodeo, of course, was a very popular feature in southeastern Oklahoma. Now we're going out into the to the coal mines east of Hartshorn. This is the number 7 mine, about 2 miles east of town. It was, the shaft was sunk about 1903, and the mine is 420 feet in depth, and it was a great producer for a period of 30 years. You might notice this round mountain over here is called Round Top, which the geologists call it Bell Star Mountain. I'll look up at you. We now go on further east of town for about 4 miles to the number 10, Rock Island number 10. At Rock Island number 10, there was also a community called Ridgeway. You'll notice the boarding house for miners and the Italian store run by Jim Antonelli. And this painting has a very historical significance, as this is the Choctaw Male Academy, about 3 miles northeast of Hartshorn. Choctaw boys of all ages were boarded and taught in this school. You might notice in the foreground is some of the older boys playing practicing Indian stickball. You notice they have 2 clubs with a little cups on them, which they have to pick up the ball with, and they throw it toward the goal. And the object of the game is the other people prevent them from throwing it beyond the goal. The rules were very lax, and the game got very rough. And some white people didn't really care for the game. Well, after the Indian faces got too bloody, but anyway, it's still a popular game. It's played some in the Choctaw Nation today. But this was a beautiful building along the mountain southeast or south. This scene is in Latimer County. This is the west end of the Gowan Valley, and you notice on this end is the Cambria mine of the Ymca Coal Company. On the other side is the Rock Island number 40 mine. In the center of the field is the picnic ground of the area, and on Labor Day, the coal mining unions from Cambria and Gowan 40 have a celebration in this park. This is significant celebration because this is the first year of the First World War. And of course, the war is part of the activity of the community. But at this picnic in particular, at Gowan and other towns, there were the Liberty Loan Drive was in full swing. The signs read, "Whoop the Kaiser, 19 and 17, join the Liberty Loan Drive." And this picture here was early in the morning of Labor Day. And we noticed the automobiles became more common. And this automobile here was a 1917 Model T Ford, driven by my 14-year-old uncle, Alton Knoll, and I'm sitting in the front seat, my mother in the back seat, and the grandmother. For some reason, we went out to the park of the Glory that morning, and but these people were already on hand. You notice in the foreground the boys in the uniforms, and these fellows were my uncles. And you notice that the amusements was the same type. Here was an army plane from the Hatbox Field in Wisconsin. Now this was in 1917 on the prairie west of Gowan. Painting of the Gowan Valley is very important to me because I was born at a house right here along the main street. When I was about 4 years old, my father bought an acreage in the western part of the town, and we built a home here where I lived until I was about 22 years old. As you notice in the background here is the 40 coal mine, and on the hill, or the Pea Ridge as we call it, is the Peebles mine. Now this valley is a very pleasant place to live, as we had the green woods and the creeks and so forth for boys to roam in. You know, here the cotton field, in 1924 we had a cotton boom in Oklahoma. Actually, Oklahoma was the second in cotton producing in the United States. And they also put up a gin down at the end of our road down here, and because I often was around that. And notice over here is a school, of course, and the ice wagon and so forth. Right here is my family in our 1920 Chevrolet going over to Hartson. And as I say, this valley is very important to me because I had a happy childhood. This is a close-up picture of Gale Main Street, looking north. At this time, the town of Guyana had a population of about 800 or 900. You notice the thing that's unusual about, or not unusual about coal mining town, is the type of business structures was in the town as a folk front, and then a lot of people said it looked like a Western movie set, which it really did. And this was about 1924. About 2 years before that, they had a tornado came through the west part. And if you notice on the mountain here, the tornado had such violence that he can pull up the grass and let alone the trees. It's very destructive because there were houses in this area and about 14 people were killed that night. One of the This is the north end of Guyana Main Street, looking south. In this picture, of course, is the school. And this picture is the company store, the Bacon Reed Mercantile Company. A very large store. And over on the other side of the street is the Guyana Drug Company, which was owned by relatives. And going on down the street, of course, is the Baptist Church and the Yellow City Hall. Now here, I'm with a group of friends coming to school about 1921 or 2. And here's a kid, and one of the neighbor kids had a goat wagon, and the goat wasn't very cooperative though. And this was the traffic on the street. This was also the delivery wagon of the company store. And of course the hills and the mountains in the background. There's a Guyana Drug Store, which was a fascinating place for me when I was small. It was operated by one of my relatives. This is 1918 at the drugstore. There's just on the counter there. And on the Saturday evening was the pay day for the coal mines across the street was the pay office, and the miners usually came by. At Guyana at that time, there was an interesting personality later on in the movies with Will Rogers. This is about an 8 or 10-year-old colored boy and his grandfather who was playing the harmonica. And on the evenings, Lincoln Parrish lived with his grandfather a short distance away, and his grandfather was injured in a coal mining accident. But on payday evening, why, they came and he performed and sang and danced for the coal miners. And you notice one of them, they make contribution to him. In other words, the coal miners supported these people for some time. Now here I am with my father and his cousin. And you notice over here on the end, the automobile is becoming a part of the scene. And we also sold gasoline for about 14 cents a gallon. This was Christmas time, and the owner of the store, he was very interested in Christmas. Now, he had a hobby horse sitting in the window there, and he didn't sell that horse very quickly. And I took a fancy to that horse, but it was kind of expensive, and my father hesitated to buy a horse. I mean, a hobby horse even. And my grandmother kind of prevailed on the owner of the store to keep her that horse, so I did get the horse. But this is a very interesting picture of Guyana, or interesting spot in Guyana, I thought, in the early days. This was a very popular sport in the Indian Territory in eastern Oklahoma in the 1820s and before that. But this is a sandbox baseball game between Haleyville and Gowan. And on the Frogtown, what we call the Frogtown baseball diamond. Here's Frogtown in the background. And the reason they call it Frogtown is the pond there where the frogs make a lot of noise. But in the ball game here, between Haleyville and Hartshorn, Gowan is in the field in the white uniform, and the center field is the dam there at the pond or lake. In this particular game, one of my uncles was playing center field at the time, and a long fly was hit into center field, and my uncle kept backing up until he backed up on the dam. As the ball came by very high, he jumped for the ball and went into the lake with a big splash. And of course that posed a question for the umpire. Did he have but he came out holding the ball up. And of course the question between Haleyville and Hartshorn was, did he really catch the ball or did he find it over behind the dam? But anyway, the umpire ruled in favor of Gowan that he caught the ball. And so Haleyville lost the game to the Gowan team, which of course didn't make them very happy. This is a scene of the Gowan City Hall in the Golden Market about the center of the main street. On this side is the Gowan, or the Smith Hotel. You notice on the porch here an old man, Mr. Smith, who was a Confederate war veteran. I thought that was kind of unusual because actually he was the only Confederate war veteran that I ever saw. This was in 1918 also for the World War I veterans. Another painting from Gowan. This is another Labor Day celebration out west of town. The significant thing about this one, historically, is the war rally or the Bond Drive rally, or about the third or fourth Liberty Loan Drive. In this case, rather interesting incident happened on the balloon ascension. The balloonist, Bill Jackson, always asked for volunteers to make the parachute jump when the balloon went up. In this case, a young Polish fellow named Mickey Zibrig stepped up and volunteered. Well, of course, when the balloon is supposed to go several hundred feet high before you cut the parachute loose, well, it seems like that Mickey kind of lost his nerve at about 50 or 75 feet, and he pulled the rip cord, and the parachute came down. He was very lucky it caught on a tree there, and of course, two or three of his friends rushed out to rescue him. Of course, this made a pretty good joking story in Gowan for a long time about Mickey and his balloon ascension. This is a picture of what we call the New Ground School. Now, although it was erected in 1927, in 1929, I graduated from the high school, from the grade school, and later on my sister Francine and my brother Warner graduated in the 30s. And you notice in the Gowan Mountain and also the switch engine pulling the coal away from Cambridge. This is a large scenic painting from Latimer County. You notice in the background is the Blue Mountains of the Ymca Range. In the foreground is a limestone prairie, as you notice the outcropping of limestone along the ridge. In this scene is a Butterfield stage to California. As you notice on the hill on the right side is the Tulsi Stage Station, or as we call it, the Mountain Station. Now this is going across the McCurtain Ranch. And of course in those days they had free range. But this is the Butterfield stage. This is called the Clarity Wagon. The wagon was open rather than unlike the Concord stages. And it was straight through. The passengers had no time to sleep overnight unless they missed the stage. And you notice they did have boards that they could lay down, but they stopped at the station, of course, frequently, as they were only about 10 or 15 miles apart for new horses. And of course, they went at almost a gallop. It took 22 days from St. Louis to San Francisco in their time. And you'll notice the riders there from the McCurtain Ranch. As I say, this is mostly a scene southwest of Wilburton. In this scene, we have a Choctaw Indian settlement. This is Down Mountain in the background, and Ymca Creek, and Clear Lake in the foreground. You notice on the edge on this side of the painting, we have a Choctaw farm. The Choctaws were very progressive. That is, a number of them were, and they took civilization the white man's way. They took every advantage of it. You notice in the foreground, the farms along the creek which produced the great crops of corn, and also the steam sawmill, which they milled lumber from the mountain. And this represents some of the progressive things about the Choctaw Nation. Now this is a very historical spot in eastern Oklahoma. This is the old Gaines County courthouse of the Choctaw Nation. Of course, when the nation became a part of Oklahoma, they moved the county seat to Wilburton, but the building existed for quite a number of years afterward. And notice in the background is the high bridge. And there's quite a number of Choctaws living in the area. You might notice in the foreground here the man in the black suit is J.S. Latimer himself. And of course they're having a stickball game out in the area in front, which they frequently did. And this particular scene, my father and family in a 1920 Chevrolet had become a proper place to tour around in automobiles. But the county courthouse was also used as a meeting house for the Indians of that area. They had a church, and also the Dawes Commission worked out of the church as a lot of the Indian allotments in Latimer County. A well-known scene in Latimer County. This is a high bridge over Boiling Springs Creek in north of the courthouse. This is the Ymca Railroad train, which they called the Nellie, that ran from Mcalester to Wilburton. This was early days, especially in the early days of automobile. This was a real special place for a picnic. And families and an organization had picnics around under the bridge, and this is a beautiful clear stream. And in the background, you notice the Sandboys Mountains. The later picture of the mountain station in the 18 and 70s, as you'll notice by the picture of these two horsemen here. This is Belsar and her friend Blue Duck. They're on her way down to Texas to do some horse trading or maybe some horse stealing perhaps. But in the background you see the Blue Mountain. And this was in the 1870s and 1880s, as this was still a well-traveled road to southwestern Oklahoma and Texas. We're now going east in the direction of Wilburton. This is the Iji Ranch, operated by Will Shaw. Will Shaw was one of the first promoters of rodeos in southeastern Oklahoma, and he raised livestock on his farm for the exhibit during the summer. But part of his custom early in the spring, before they took the rodeo routes, he had a free barbecue and an exhibition of his new performers and livestock. And you notice out here all the people in the area came to the barbecue and watched his new livestock that would be used in the rodeos. The west side of Wilburton is the Eastern Oklahoma College. In the state, back during the time of this, we become a state, a school of Oklahoma School of Mines was established at this site. Later on in the 20s, it was changed to Eastern Oklahoma College, mostly training for teachers and so forth. And of course, to the northeast is the town of Wilburton itself. This is Eastern Oklahoma College, west side of Wilburton. I attended this college in 1933 and 34. You'll notice here, this, of course, is a small college. It serves southeastern Oklahoma. The football team is, is coming out on the field for practice. And this is about during the noon hour, and the pep team, they're exercising a little bit. You notice that the girls are coming across to the dormitory, and we're coming out of the classroom. Under the tree here, as I'm standing there talking to one of my friends. At that time, the school only had an enrollment of about 600. Nowadays, they have many more buildings, of course, and an enrollment of about 2,000. A panoramic view of the city of Wilburton itself and the county seat of Latimer County. It was a coal mine boom town in the early days, as the others were, as a mine in the distance. Probably the most significant building is the high school building on the hill, and it was a very large building and it could be seen from a great distance. There's a painting from one of the well-known state parks of today, the Robbers Cave State Park. Now, this is on the day in 1933 when the park was opened. You notice that on the speaker stand is the then governor, Alfalfa Bill Murray, and the There was a great crowd, of course, came to the opening of the park. And of course, it's a very popular state park today. Another scene from the Robbers Cave State Park, which it shows the caves and the in the cliffs. But, and of course, this is the crowd that visited it. We're going down into eastern Oklahoma, near Poto, Oklahoma. This is the Kavanaugh Mountain. It's sometimes described as the highest hill in Oklahoma because it is 1,999 feet high, 1 foot short of being a mountain. But it's a very scenic area, and the mountain, of course, is very prominent in that area. Along the south side of the mountain is the old stagecoach route. Down on one of the creeks, I think it was Brazil Creek, a man named Edwards put up a grist mill. Most of his customers, of course, were Choctaws. He also had the station where they changed the horses. You notice in the foreground there is an ox team pulling freight, military freight to the southwest, probably to Fort Washita. Of course, that was very slow transportation. The stagecoach is lining their passengers to get out and stretch their legs a little bit and get a drink there. This is a scene that's very prominent in eastern Oklahoma today. Up to the border of eastern Oklahoma. In the foreground, you notice the Arkansas River. Across the river is Arkansas. This is a scene of Fort Smith about 1859, just before the Civil War. It was the main base of supplies for the military in the southwestern United States. The steamboats along the Government Wharf were from New Orleans and St. Louis. They brought in supplies for the garrison at the fort and also supplies for the forts in the southwest. You'll notice along the shore there is the stagecoach is heading southwest. You notice over on the right hand there is a patrol coming in from Fort Washita. And also the wagons, the covered wagon of the Army and the ox teams of the contractors is heading south. The long boat you see is from the Indian Territory. The Indians have brought down this boat with supplies to sell to the commissary at Fort Smith in the way of hides and meat and even barrels of pecans. You notice on the river is the ferry, which is ferried across from Arkansas to Oklahoma. Fort Smith was very important in the settlement of eastern Oklahoma, as it was the gateway for settlers coming to the Indian Territory. And also, of course, it was a site of the Parker Court, which enforced the laws in the Indian Territory and hired a great number of U.S. Marshals, which includes my wife's grandfather, J.R. Berry.
This concludes the video of eastern Oklahoma. If you are interested in any of the paintings, or if you would like for Linus to paint you a special painting, our address is 905 Northwest 67th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73116. Our telephone number, area code 405-843-3602.